According to a 2009 study by Fairness and Accuracy in Reporting, with the exception of CBS, every major media outlet in the United States shares at least one board member with at least one drug company. Let me put it in perspective for you. These board members wake up, they go to a meeting at Merck or Pfizer, and then they have their driver take them over to a meeting with NBC to decide what kind of programming that network is going to air. And for those board members who aren't pulling double duty with a media conglomerate and a big drug company, they still understand that they can't be honest and objective about Big Pharma because Big Pharma pays their bills. Drug companies spend about $5 billion a year on advertising with these corporate media outlets. So when Pfizer or Merck or Eli Lilly or any of the drug companies kill or cripple Americans with defective drugs, do you really think these board members are going to allow their story to be told on the air? It can take anywhere from 3 days to a full week before the media reports on a drug or a medical device recall, if they report at all. In the case of Invokana, it took 32 days before television outlets reported a single story involving an FDA warning about the potential problems with the product. The FDA began warning about the extreme dangers of Cook IVC filters as early as 2010, and it took about 5 years before television media started reporting that to the public. And it's worth pointing out that in these instances, it was only through non-corporate, independent media outlets that these stories were told at all. It was the outlets who weren't being forced to remain silent about the drug industry. And you can replace IVC or Invokana with any other drug or product, and the story is all the same. Stryker hip implants, C8, Vioxx, Roundup, Xarelto, talcum powder, they're all the same thing. The corporate media doesn't care about these stories because they either share board members with these companies or because they want those companies to keep throwing dollars their way in big advertising dollars. These gigantic media corporations aren't going to do anything to threaten their relationship with big advertisers. Drugs are a cash cow advertising bonanza for corporate media. Fortunately, an increasing number of Americans are starting to wake up and realize that the mainstream media shouldn't be trusted on issues like this. In recent years, we've seen the alternative media experience rapid growth. The mainstream media has been losing credibility at a staggering rate, and Americans are starting to look elsewhere for the truth about what's really going on out there. As a result of that advertising money kicking around, the corporate media isn't permitted to report complex drug stories anymore.
Maybe when you think of Africa, this is what you imagine, but it's so much more. This vast continent is made up of more than 50 countries. It is home to nearly 1.25 billion people, including me and my family. I was brought up here. I love Africa. It's in my blood. But even as a child, Africa's exploitation by foreign powers was clear to me. And now working here, it's still all too apparent. Decisions made thousands of miles away are impacting on Africans. This is one of the thousands of unregulated, unmonitored mines in the DRC. It's crawling with children, working like modern-day slaves. A 12-hour-long day of punishing work may earn them the equivalent of £1. Although one of the poorest countries on earth, DRC is rich in minerals. But a history of brutal colonial exploitation looks like being repeated now in 2017. Much of it's mined by hand with rudimentary tools in harsh, potentially hazardous conditions. And wretched whether or not, the rush is on for a mineral the DRC has in great abundance, cobalt, and it's fast becoming more precious than gold. It's a critical ingredient in lithium-ion batteries which power smartphones and laptops. An army of children are at the heart of the mining production. Wearing no shoes and in the most wretched conditions, Dorsan is ordered to retrieve the sack he's forgotten. There's an urgency now. The rains make this dangerous work even more risky. And Dorsan's told in no uncertain terms he risks a beating if he messes up again. Dorsan, with Richard beside him, have worked all day. They're 8 and 11 years old. Even this punishing work doesn't guarantee enough for food. Dorsan hasn't eaten for 2 days now. This is what helpless looks like, and he's one of the children making millions for multinational corporations in America and China whilst they suffer in squalor. For this, they'll get maybe 8 British pence a day. The children's cobalt is sold cheaply to mostly Chinese traders who we film secretly. They don't ask questions about where their cobalt comes from or who's worked to extract it. They just want the best price.
The black part is cobalt.
Even those who aren't Chinese, this trading market has Indian owners, told us they sell onto the dominant Chinese exporter of cobalt, CDM. The cobalt first mined here is then sold again to the Chinese parent company, which then supplies some of the world's biggest battery makers. And those batteries, with ingredients which originated in DRC, end up in, for instance, smartphones. It's an intricate supply chain which allows easy deniability for the multinationals making huge profits. An investigation last year by Amnesty found similar human rights abuses. Nothing appears to have changed. Most of these child miners will never own a smartphone. They barely survive from day to day. And many other children like Dorsan will be back again tomorrow, digging out one of the most sought-after minerals of our time for a pittance.
The conflict at the Hangzhou 100 Tex garment factory started after a workers' union leader was fired. Ted Pang-oh had just finished negotiating payment of overtime. Hundreds of workers went on strike in protest at his dismissal and occupied the factory for more than a month. Then a riot started.
We were very angry at the Chinese manager. He used an electric shock device on one of the female workers. It happened when she was talking about unfair treatment by the management. Most of the workers could not control themselves.
Our request to film inside the factory was refused, and its owners were unavailable to comment. The factory has been closed for several weeks because of the damage to the production line. The owners have now agreed to rehire the union leader.
For the European brand H&M, the violent protest here at the Chinese-owned factory is embarrassing. Staff are still repairing the damage done during the riot last month. Despite improvements in Myanmar's textile industry, labor unions say that still a lot needs to be done to improve labor rights.
Since EU sanctions were lifted 4 years ago, textiles have become the 4th largest export product from Myanmar. In 2015, the government agreed to a minimum wage of $2.60 per day, the lowest in the region after Bangladesh. This makes it attractive for foreign brands like H&M and Marks & Spencer. H&M says it's deeply concerned by the recent conflict and that as a result, the relationship with this factory is on hold. The company also says that it is working with the labor unions to address factory conditions. The Hangzhou 100 Tex garment factory is due to reopen on Monday, but it's not clear who it will be supplying to.
Western government's understanding of the ongoing conflict in Syria is inadequate. That's according to American journalist Theo Padnos. He was held captive in Syria for 2 years by the Al-Qaeda affiliate known as Al-Nusra. RT's Emily Sue spoke with him.
Conflict is something everyone wants to avoid at all costs, and the situation in Syria is no different. For reporters, though, the ongoing war there is a story that needs covering, despite the risks.
Something very dangerous and alarming is occurring in northwestern Syria. This is the emergence of a second Islamic State there.
Mr. Panos, how concerning is this so-called second ISIL?
How concerning is it? We will know when they turn up in Paris or London with Kalashnikovs. Well, I know that they have tons of weapons. All the rebels from the different areas have been shipped up to this northwestern corner of Syria, area around Idlib. That entire province is governing itself by, proper Islamic Sharia law, which involves shooting people on the street. It's not what we want for our fellow human beings. We should pity the women and the children up there. The civilians, no, it's a terrible, it's a catastrophe for them. And, the quicker it can be brought to heel, the better it is for the civilians. And it could carry on forever unless the outside world really can stop sending missiles to the rebels.
The target was unmistakable. Shia Muslims visiting Damascus were on their way to pray at a cemetery in the Old City. 2 bomb blasts about 10 minutes apart killed dozens of Iraqi citizens.
We finished the visit and went to the bus station when it started to rain. So we went to sit in a building under construction to avoid the rain. The explosion happened near the building. People who were near to me were all killed, and I survived.
Saturday's attack appears to be one of the deadliest in the capital for several years. Syrian government forces have managed to keep the intense fighting beyond the city limits of Damascus throughout much of the war. 4 years ago, 61 people were killed in the capital in bombings in a wealthy neighborhood near the Russian embassy. And in January, 10 people were killed, 8 of them soldiers, after a former affiliate of al-Qaeda bombed a heavily fortified area in Damascus. Fatah el-Sham said it was trying to target Russian military advisors supporting Syrian troops. No one has claimed responsibility for Saturday's attack. Shia fighters from Iraq, Iran, and Hezbollah have been fighting alongside Syrian government forces. And Shia shrines and neighborhoods have been attacked by al-Qaeda and ISIL during the war, which started 6 years ago this Wednesday.
It's the last hurdle to overcome before entering Europe. But coming into Ceuta from Morocco is not easy for migrants, whether they try by sea or land.
They know we are always watching, so they cross when there are lots of boats around. They move slowly to get us confused, and then all of a sudden they speed up, and in 2 minutes they reach the beach.
Ceuta and the other Spanish enclave of Melilla are the only 2 land borders between the European Union and Africa. A 7-meter-high double fence separates Ceuta from Morocco. Spain and Morocco cooperate to keep it secure. The tools recovered by the Civil Guard show how migrants prepare. Sandals fitted with screws to scale the fence, hooks to climb quickly and pull down the razor wire at the top, or ropes with wooden sticks. Perhaps the determination and desperation to reach Europe is most evident in these pictures. Migrants trying to sneak through the border crossing, hidden under a vehicle's backseat, or behind the dashboard, or worse, stuck next to the engine.
Now, the Italian city of Naples has been the scene of violent protests against a visit by a leader of an anti-Islam political party. Now, riot police fired tear gas and water cannon to disperse demonstrators who threw rocks and Molotov cocktails at police. Protesters are angry at the visit of Northern League's leader Matteo Salvini to the southern city of Naples. Northern League is based in the northern part of the European country. Political party is known for its anti-immigrant, anti-Islam, and anti-European Union stance.
Protests continue outside the Dutch consulate in the Turkish city of Istanbul as demonstrators gather there for the second consecutive day. Angry crowds took down the Dutch flag at the consulate, raising the Turkish flag instead. They condemned the Netherlands for banning Turkey's Foreign Minister Mevlut Çavuşoğlu from entering the country and expelling Turkish Family Affairs Minister.
Numerous people have been injured in clashes between protesters and riot police in Georgia. Demonstrations over the arrest of several men over unpaid parking fines turned violent in the Black Sea city of Batumi. Protesters gathered in front of a police building, demanding the release of the drivers. The Interior Minister was quoted as saying those involved in the violence would be punished. But then, apparently attempting to calm the situation, he reportedly said the arrested men would be released.
Well, confirmation of the scandal-ridden president is out to spark wild scenes of jubilation among most Koreans. It did spark anger in a small group of her supporters. Two different rallies took place on Saturday within a stone's throw of each other in central Seoul. Kim Hye-sung takes us to the contrasting scenes.
Tens of thousands of people flooded into the streets of Seoul for the 20th time on Saturday. But this time, the mood was different. With broad smiles and breathing a collective sigh of relief, people celebrated the ousting of now former President Park Geun-hye. Young people, families, and kids enjoyed the mild spring weather and the many humorous costumes and figures, and a concert in the evening. Placards displayed slogans like "Justice has been done," and people chanted "Light can drive out darkness" with candles in their hands. Just a few blocks away, Park supporters held their own rally opposing the impeachment ruling. The mostly middle-aged and elderly supporters waved the Korean national flag, chanting, "We impeach the impeachment," saying the rule of law is dead. Park supporters reacted violently to Friday's court ruling, clashing with police, resulting in the deaths of 3 protesters, so tensions were high on Saturday. The Seoul Metropolitan Police Agency has deployed more than 16,000 officers and security guards and buses to separate Park supporters from the anti-Park crowd in Gwanghwamun Square.
What would normally have been a bustling shopping centre in Germany was virtually empty on a Saturday afternoon. Uniformed officers were the only signs of life at the Limbecker Platz Mall in Essen. Police had closed the mall, acting on intelligence reports of a potential terror attack. The origin of the threat, the local media reported, was a German with links to ISIL. Police confirmed they had searched an apartment in the nearby town of Oberhausen and were questioning its owner. And they were also questioning another man in an internet cafe in the same town. As a precautionary measure, police stepped up security at a shopping mall in Oberhausen. Germany is on high alert following deadly terror attacks in France and Belgium, and after a man drove a truck into a Berlin Christmas market in December, killing 12 people. As a result, many feel on edge. It's frightening, says this woman, because you stand in the shop and every day you must anticipate that anything could happen. It's not a nice feeling. A couple of days ago, something happened in Düsseldorf, and you get this feeling that trouble is getting nearer. Now there's something in Essen, you get a little bit scared.
Irgendwas in Essen, also man kriegt schon ein bisschen Angst.
Security concerns are likely to be a major issue in the upcoming elections in Germany, and something which Angela Merkel will have to grapple with as she seeks a 4th term as Chancellor.
A specialist bomb squad has been sent to the Swedish city of Gothenburg after an explosion. According to Breitbart News, this second threat comes just 24 hours after a suspected car bomb rocked Stockholm. Authorities suspect the blast was caused by an attack involving some form of homemade device. The exact mechanism of the Gothenburg explosion is still unclear. However, the number of grenade attacks and car fires in Sweden has shot up in recent years, possibly because of warring gangs.
At least 38 people have been killed by Cyclone Inao that struck Madagascar this week. According to the country's disaster management department, the cyclone caused enormous damage countrywide. An estimated 153,000 people have been displaced by waters caused by the storm. Inao hit Madagascar's northeastern coast on Tuesday morning. It has destroyed roads and cut off communications with the Antalaha district.
A few bricks are all Jose Remaicuna could recover from his ruined home. After 12 years living in the town of Tambo Grande, all his possessions have gone. He's glad he saved his family.
The water came from behind like an ocean wave. I grabbed my children and ran out, and the wall fell over. We almost got cut underneath it. Then my whole house collapsed.
Almost everyone here is affected by a month of floods. More than 30 families from this neighborhood are living in makeshift tents at a bus terminal, waiting for help.
The mayor of Tambo Grande had to go to Lima, the capital, to look for aid because the regional government doesn't have enough resources to help these people who've lost everything.
Municipal leaders here say some communities remain isolated and others in danger of more flooding.
We are banging on the central government's door and international organization for help to clean up the drains. We only have one crane.
Police have closed bridges, fearing their collapse in the city of Piura, the regional capital. The Piura River is overflowing, reaching the city's main plaza on Friday. The region's governor is worried 200,000 Peruvians living downstream are in danger if this part of the river overflows.
We anticipate that we may have to evacuate people from vulnerable areas, but we have to build camps to relocate people with reasonable living conditions to evacuate them properly.
These women in the village of Curamori are desperate for help. They're appealing for water pumps, medicine, sandbags, and information. Regional government and civil defense workers have delivered aid to some areas, but not here. Many homes have been flooded for weeks.
We are living in the water. There is a risk of illness. There's fungus, cockroaches, flies and mosquitoes. And we are in the lowlands. If the river overflows, we don't know where to go.
Meteorologists say 10 times more rain has fallen in the last 2 months than is normal for the whole year. And because the rainy season isn't over yet, neither is the potential for more dangerous flooding.